So I think everyone can see me, right? So Arkio is a collaborative, briefly mentioned, a collaborative AR, VR, but also like a flat screen design tool. And I'm going to position myself to the second slide so we can. I'm going to move myself in. So currently we are in Singapore. I loaded a Revit model in the Singapore context, and we'll later just jump outside and talk a bit about that. With me today is Arthur from the committee today, and we're going to show this together. Now, everyone is, I think, familiar with the architectural process of sketching, making foam models, and communicating design ideas together. We often do that in 2D with 3D objects, but we most of the day now work on flat screens to look at our 3D designs. Now we have with AR and VR, we have technologies to look at these designs in actual 3D, so we can perceive those scales and see those changes live. But once we want to do a change, we can move back to, we have to move back to our flat screen to see our changes and export everything back to a 3D environment for VR. Now, with Arkio, we want to do things a bit different. And I'm going to ask Arthur, like, not to maybe block too much, otherwise people cannot see the slides too much. Like with Arkio, we want to make some, the design process itself almost feel like physical model making, where you can pick up objects and where you can slide them along and they will align and stretch and glue to other objects, like they would be physical 3D objects. We do this in a way that we are familiar with in architecture. We're using tracing paper to print floor plans. We put a new layer on top and we sketch ideas on top. In Arkio, we want to do that with a 3D matter. So we are able to load in a Revit model or a Rhino model or a SketchUp model. And in Arkio, you can make new suggestions or sketches on top of this. So I'm just as a little try out here, adding a little sketch to that design. I will later just show you live in the context that we're working in today. And let's move to the next few slides. So with Arkio, we wanna give everyone the like the power to experience and adjust the design on any scale. So I'm able to stretch objects as using my hands, like really picking the vertices of the objects, but I can also edit objects from a distance, just picking them up. And later I will show you can actually pick up entire buildings in the scene like that. And best of all is we can do all of this together. So now Arthur is with me in this space, but we can do this with up to 10 people at the same time. We can edit this scene on different scales. And we can also invite people to view what we're doing live. Now, the nice thing of Arkio is it works on any device. Not everyone, everyone has access to the VR hardware. Like maybe some of you have heard about the Oculus Quest, which is a new portable VR headset. Arkio runs on that device, but it also runs on iPads, and we're also planning to support the upcoming AR devices that are nearing. Now, the best actually is to just show all of this live, but maybe good to explain a bit. Like we built a modeling engine from scratch here, and almost three and a half years of development went into this. It's a volumetric modeling engine. So you can compare it a bit to tools like Revit that are also volumetric, but we added this physical layer on top. So you can pick up, slide, and move things around and glue things around. But they're basically a database, like a bin database, and it works very good with Revit, what I will show later. Now, I'm going to change my camera to make you guys see what I'm seeing. And hello, there's Arthur, and we are currently in that Revit building that we loaded. I'm going to just teleport outside of this building. So right now, I'm just making myself really big, 1000 scale. And we're able to just look around that model as being a physical model. And in that model, we can load all these 3D buildings that we see here as context. But we can also interact with the objects that we made in Arkio. So this thing I actually already made last time, but I'm just going to throw it away. And we're going to build something new here. Now, when I'm building with geometry, it's a very simple process. We're adding objects using a interface that we made for working with VR and AR, and just selecting the actual shape that will make you select it. And I'm going to use a split mode, which when I'm creating shapes will automatically split into floor levels. So I'm just going to make a base like I'm doing here, pick up the bottom stack like I'm doing here. Maybe I want to get rid of these top layers. I don't need them. And I can add new stacks on top of here. And I can even carve into these objects. And that will make a live Boolean operation. So using my hands, I can just fine tune the shape itself. I can pick up and slide objects. But I can also stretch, and I think Arthur is now in the same time modeling something there, so that's great. You can show that it's a collaborative environment. So I can stretch these objects, and you see how everything parametrically connects to it and stretches with it. And when rotating my controller, I can even like stretch some parts of that model node. Now, all of this geometry is parametric. So when I'm adding, for example, program information. So maybe I want to add, let me quickly, because I'm seeing my camera is not 100% smooth, it's not too comfortable to watch. But when I'm in the program mode, let me just show you there, I can add, for example, some residential program to these volumes. And you see now on the top of the building, some totals are appearing. I can add some commercial area, and there's 3 floors there, and maybe add some office space in between here. And the best thing of all this is when I'm editing my shape, you see that the sizes are all changing in real time. And this data, what I'm seeing here, can be imported or exported to a CSV file. So you can also load in your own 3D program of maybe you have some site plan already that needs to be fit in, and you can also export it again to work with the data and other tools. Now, when I'm working on different scales, I'm able to just stretch like I just did before, just moving around the different objects. But I can also just jump on the street level. Let me actually, just before I do that, add some scale elements. Like I'm just going to add a tree here and a tree here and one here. So when I jump to that street level and one-to-one scale, I'm able to really see like the scale property of this area of the Marina Bay Sand area. There's some floating geometry we have over there. But on this level, I'm still able to make adjustments. So maybe I want to make those like first 2 levels. I don't want to make them 3 meters high. I want to make them 6 meters high. And you see when I'm doing that, it stretches the tower top geometry with it. So everything is connected and parametrically aligned. And it works a bit like the meshing tool in Revit and Formit, but we try to make things a bit more like physical model making. Now, briefly checking the time, that we're on time. So Arthur is creating something really nice here, the forest I see. And using the tools that we have, let me just show you some of the tools. I can make, for example, a suggestion on what Arthur is doing by making a sketch. And I can also do that on that Revit model that we loaded. So like right here, I added those slides for the start of the scene. But I can also add little notes on that model. Maybe I want to make the double height opening bigger here, or maybe I'm considering having the tower like a slightly wider. I can just add like a cube. Whoop. Here we go. Add like a cube that is without levels. And adding these suggestions on top of the model can happen in both the normal way of working in Arkio, which is the VR way, but we can also do that in 2D using conventional devices. So what I did here is all in 3D, but I'm now going to just show you how we can log into that same session that we're actually working in from an iPad. So let me just make sure that iPad is running. So we're now reconnecting to the scene. So currently I see on the iPad, on the iPad I see the 2 VR users in that scene, and I'm able to make suggestions.
Yes,
Here.
currently on an iPad, yeah.
No trickery. And like on here, I have the same tool sets or user interface, so I'm able to just zoom in, for example, on that Revit building. I can pan around a bit to see what we are creating, and maybe make a note on the side of that building. Like on the iPad, the sketching, it works really good because you're using your hand, right? You can even use an Apple Pencil to get more exact sketches. I don't know if anyone ever used the iPad for architecture.
So you're saying there's added functionality using a tablet. Okay.
It has, like, especially if you want to do like the kind of conventional 2D edits, like sketching, the iPad, of course, a bit more precise. When you're working with VR, it's very good for these rough massing studies and shaping of designs, because it's very close to that model making. But when doing the 2D things like sketching, the iPad actually has. And another advantage that the iPad version has, let me just show you that the data is also live here, and I can make, for example, an edit, so I can pick up that volume that Arthur just made, and I can slide it around somewhere else. So the iPad has like the same editing functionality on that same environment, but the added benefit of an iPad is that they also have like an AR mode in it. So we can put that model on a table in AR, and we're able to just, I can show you going out of the camera, but I'm able to just pan around. And see, I see the texture of the Marina Bay is not 100% aligned, but the models are. And the best of all is, let me just put this headset down. It's like, this is something that's still experimental, and I haven't actually talked about that yet, but it's maybe good to say. Arkio is still a tool which is in development and which is currently in beta. So everything that I'm showing here, these are like the recent developments of how the software is progressing. And we're looking for people that want to beta test this with us. So the features I'm showing here, for example, like modeling an object in AR on that table, and maybe making a suggestion on that model with a sketch in AR. Like, these are all features that have yet to be tested, but they're like enabling a workflow that typically was not possible in architecture. You had to go back to your PC, then export to software to render in VR. Then you had to use a different software to use it in AR. Then you had to use a different software again to use it on a tablet. Like with Arkio, we want to connect all of these devices, and you just log in and make edits on that same 3D space. And when you're okay with the results, or you have explored the different scenes together, you can export those results back to the original CAD application. Now, to talk a bit about that, I'll just put that tablet down here and just go back to normal mode. Oops, the pencil gets stuck there. The different features in the app are doing design explorations and studies. So the scene that we made here now, I'm able to change or make a new duplicate of that scene where I make new suggestions. So maybe in this one, I don't want to move that tower here. I just want to move it here, and maybe I just move that one over here. And just being in that space and making several options together, I'm able to maybe just teleport here down to the street and look like this. I'm able to switch between all of these options with all of my participants in the same meeting, and we can literally make decisions on the spot of where to go next. Because that process in architecture, that's often where it stalls, where we need to make design options for clients. Then we need to go back to our drawing equipment. We need to work on it for 2 weeks. Well, in the end, a lot of the work and problems could have been solved on that spot with the clients or with like design consultants about trying to connect the dots or like some complex design issue that you're trying to solve. And having those options inside of the app also gives you that extra bit of work that's very common in architecture. Then let me see, there's like a lot of things I can actually talk about in the app, but I don't want to make it too much like a one-directional story. Like if there would be any questions, I'm happy to answer any of them. In the meantime, I don't know if there were any questions.
Johan, maybe I can ask you a question.
Yeah.
So when I got to know you many years ago, you were starting to develop this app. So
Yeah.
what drove you to start to develop this app? There must be a reason or experience you had in school.
Frustration, actually. Yeah, because the thing with the design process in Revit is like they're very contradictory in how
technical, right?
How
and you need to know many
work
buttons. You need to know where the buttons are.
Like
so in a way, you're trying to liberate the design to laymen, to developers, not just very technical modelers or architects.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, that's a very decent and very great effort from you. The other question I have is, so you mentioned that after you have modeled the geometry, you are able to export it into various formats. So what are the available formats that you can export it in?
Let me actually show that like this one that we just made, because the available formats that we have now, it's so I'm just going to open that like option drawer that I have here, and I'm going to export. So we now have the option of OBJ format, which pretty much all 3D tools, they support OBJ, and the Revit. And Revit, we really closely integrate with. And because Arkio is very similar in the modeling, let's say the mass of the shapes and the editing itself, it's a very good integration we can make. And here we see Revit, where we have our plugin. We can just import that scene that we just exported. And this is actually, like, once we got it into Revit, it's also allowing you to make those DWG exports, like using the set files, and like you have like a lot of, like, once it's in Revit, you can connect it to Speckle. You can the possibilities are endless in a way. And
so would the geometry still remain editable when it's in OBJ or in Revit
depending on what geometry? So like over here, let me just show you. So we have you can choose if you want a generic model or a mass. So like for example, there's towers that I made, like they probably make more sense to have as a mass in the Revit. So we'll just do that. And the generic models have the advantage of like being in like the individual sliced stacks of the floors. So they both have their usage. once the geometry is a mass, it's a bit like the dynamo masses. They are a direct shape. So the next time you need to get that information back in from Arkio, it will update that direct shape. So it's basically the same as working with Dynamo or Format or any of these other tools that just push the data in in Revit. But it's still native geometry, so you can use those masses to populate the facades with adaptive.
Oh, that is really awesome, because that means the geometry of the object is not dead. It can still remain editable and to be developed by the architects that will take over the project downstream.
And it's also like you can keep doing these round trips. So if you're like if you have something and you loaded it into Revit and you just want to make another suggestion with a client, or like another design team comes in, you can keep doing these round trips, and it will just it just gets rid of the old Arkio geometry, and you can get like the new families and geometry.
You could bring the model back into Arkio for the developers to continue to collaborate with the architects to edit the model, correct?
Yeah.
I would just like to add, maybe it's not just like collaboration with the client, but also with the authorities. Like for myself,
correct.
URA, it's good as well to have different points of view and in a more immersive environment, like from the street level, looking at certain massing, and also if it's a tower from a neighboring tower height. On specific controlled sites where certain things are mounted particular, it's actually a quite good environment for collaboration. Perhaps for the clients, it's for them to understand the massing and basically the form of the building. But in terms of a lot of changes that would affect the urban design environment, it would be mostly with the authorities. But it's quite interesting. So when you were saying that when you were pulling up some levels, you have set floor to floors for specific buildings, yeah?
Yeah, so these slices that you saw appearing when I pulled the shape out of thin air, those are by default set to 3 meters, but you can define them like specific. And the height adjustment that I just did when I was stretching things, they allow you to just like make fine adjustments on like some levels they need to be higher, for example. So like in Arkio, let's just show you here. So that these levels you were talking about, right?
Yeah.
So like they get, like when I'm creating a shape like this, they get made automatically, but they are still parametric. So you can use that to make like little Rem Koolhaas buildings if you want to do that kind of stuff. But you can also just use them like, oh, I made too many floors, I just throw those away.
You remind me of this building in Singapore called the Interlace.
Yes, it's a former OMA architect also, right? Like they like that kind of style with the
all it came from Rem's office anyway, so it's the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so you see, this is that mass that got generated. So you can just like it's a mass family, so you can assign mass floors to it, and work with that. And even the sketches, like if you draw some notes and some sketches, they all just flow into Revit, and you can build your floor or road or whatever was the design.
That's really good, because sometimes in the model we have to indicate a pedestrian connectivity and and cyclist connectivity. So by drawing it easily in Arkio and bringing it into Revit, we can easily tell the developer or the architect where the intended routes that are supposed to be in this building.
And I think this is what like these kind of workflows they typically have not been possible, because once you get to a VR, you're often at an end station. You are looking at it, but like once you have a suggestion or something, you have to go do all sorts of stuff to get it back into the VR environment.
True.
Okay. At this point of the session, we could go into a panel discussion.
Hi, Robert. Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
Should I stop sharing my screen? I think. Yeah.
Let me just set up my screen as well. Hold on. I'm at, oddly, I don't see anybody. Everybody disappeared. Wait, am I sharing my screen now?
Not yet, Robert.
Not yet.
Being blocked by the.
That's working now.
Okay,
there we go.
Okay, so so right now for the Q&A we have a couple of questions. A few for Robert. So how often would you regularly update the database? So with this software, is it on a subscription basis, and therefore you'll be updating the software?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so it's really important.
Database, I mean, sorry.
Yeah, no, so it's really important that the data is very accurate, because developers and architects and real estate agents who use this platform, and even government, that they rely on this information. So if we've got outdated information in the database, then the product isn't very helpful for people. So it's important that it is up to date. So we update weekly.
Okay, okay, weekly. Oh, well,
yeah, which is really fast. We'd like to do daily, but we're getting there, but it's weekly at this stage, which is still, the government rules don't change that fast. So weekly is normally more than sufficient for our business.
I would think weekly update applies to the private market where the prices change very frequently.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and even for government rules, we do weekly as well. So for the listings, like the sales data and the rental data and that data, that's updated daily. So that's a lot faster. But for the government planning regulations, it's updated weekly.
Oh, they have a weekly update. I was thinking, is it a lot, basically the major cities in Australia that you have all the information, or is it like?
We've got complete national coverage. So even the rural areas and the country areas, we include that as well. So we have metro cities and the rural areas. So it's all the areas.
Okay, so it means that's why it's weekly, is because you're controlling a national scale of input.
Yeah, and somewhere around so for example, like the city of Sydney, they haven't updated their rules in 8 years. So it's been the same